First of all, what do you make of the trial? What do you make of the outcome of the trial?
You know, we could simplify this and, you know, call it what it is. You know, there's hardly ever any real justice for survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. We know that. And then when you add, you know, having a lot of money, it's even like less likely, right? So I think that we have a situation where, in my opinion, and I know that that man has so many supporters and he wouldn't piss on people in a fire. So I don't understand why they support him, but he has the supporters that'll make all the excuses. But I followed the case along, and I think that the prosecution presented a strong case. I also followed people that were in the courtroom talking about jurors falling asleep, especially during important parts, like when the psychologist was talking about the psychology of, you know, abuse survivors and stuff like that. People were falling asleep. Closing remarks, the jurors were giggling along with the defense when he was making jokes about the baby oil and Astroglide. 8 men, 4 women, 2 of the women were older Black women. There was a part of me that was just kind of like, he's going to get away with this, you know, and it's as straightforward as a case as they presented. These people decided that these women were all consenting participants, despite evidence showing coercion, violence, intimidation, you know. So it's interesting because I'm an abolitionist, right? And I'm one of those people that believes we handle these things differently in the streets. Don't need to waste the taxpayer dollar. Don't need to, you know, people will say, oh, I hope he suffers in prison. And that's not what that's about. Like, that's the problem with the system. And as I said online, I said, this is why I'm an abolitionist, because this is not right. You should not be able to buy your way out of accountability when you have harmed people, right? So here we are. And the community is up in arms and people are fighting with each other. And it just, again, over a man who would not even think twice about any of these people, right? Here we are.
Let me push back a little bit. And from an abolitionist posture, I think, because I'm with you. I think everything Diddy did that was fucked up, and there's so many things that they far exceed what the state charged him with. I mean, we got 3 decades of harm, abuse, exploitation, violence.
He shot a woman in the face and had another guy do the time for it. I mean, like,
I'm not familiar with that.
Allegedly.
I was gonna say allegedly.
Not trying to get you in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that story, but
oh yeah.
No story about Diddy. I don't think you could tell me a story about Diddy that would make me go, no way.
Right. Starting with City College, like, you know. So this has been decades of stuff. I mean, the rumors are what they are. Everything is alleged. Don't come for Mark. But like, he's not known to be a good person, right? And the defense, the reason why he's still in jail right now and the bond was denied is because the defense said, yeah, you know, he has anger and violent issues. Yeah. So why wouldn't we think that somebody like that is not
witness
capable
intimidation,
of
etc.
right.
I mean, there's a lot of allegations there. But I'm still gonna push back a little bit on a couple of things. One, I agree about the abuse and accountability. The problem is the state didn't charge him with that. Right? They didn't, you know. Is there a way, and Zakiya Simpson, one of our viewers said, do you think racketeering aligned with his actions and the prosecution proved that? It seemed to me that part of the problem was that the state overreached, that they were charging him with things that they couldn't, either that he didn't do or that they couldn't prove or that a jury wouldn't feel comfortable convicting him of. Like RICO.
That part. So we do know that, based on testimony, we can only go based on what people said, that he had people doing things for him, right? So kind of setting up this enterprise thing. You know, he had people procuring drugs for him. He had people going possibly to intimidate people, sending messages and all those kinds of things. So he kind of has the enterprise thing. A lot of people were wondering, why is he being charged by himself with RICO? And I think they proved that he had an enterprise set up, right? If you believe Kid Cudi's testimony, right, and if you believe that he had something to do with his car getting blown up and stuff, you've got intimidation there. If you listen to Capricorn Clark, and I think my biggest issue is that the most compelling testimonies came from women. And again, I have to kind of go back to that, right? Capricorn Clark, in my opinion, her testimony laid out pretty much everything that I think they needed, you know, to prove the racketeering and to prove the coercion, to prove the violence, the intimidation, all those kinds of things. And they only needed 2 things, right? And I think that they proved those. But what I think is that, again, the jury was sleeping a lot, not paying attention. There were several jurors who were not taking notes. You had the guy living in New Jersey who wanted so bad to be on it, he lied about living in New York, right? You
That
had
was
like
crazy.
Right, there were so many things going on, and I don't understand how you can be caught sleeping while you're a juror and not be replaced with an alternate. So I'm sorry, I got to poke those holes and kind of condemn the whole system. And then you have that juror who didn't understand, the judge's instructions, and it's like, I have my issues with juries anyway, because we're asking people who have no knowledge of law and to make decisions for people's lives. I don't think for a case like this that you leave it to the 74-year-old white woman to kind of make the I don't know. It's just, I just have a lot of issues with the whole thing. So I just think that, and I agree that I agree on some level that there was possibly an overreach, right? Because they thought that they had him and they maybe didn't come through. But I also think that there was enough testimony to at least show the trafficking, and that's my opinion. I'm sorry, like if people can disagree with me.
No, and I'm with you. I actually thought, and I was asked this the other day, if I'd been a juror, based on what I know, and I didn't watch the case as closely as you did, but from what I saw, I thought he was guilty on all of the things. I would have found him guilty on all of the things.
Oh yes, if I was a juror, I would have too. And again, I would have taken notes and been able to refer back to the testimonies that would have confirmed these things, because I believe that they were all there. And I was following this along like every single day for 7 weeks, so
I think sometimes jurors are uncomfortable in my experience. Sometimes, even if it's the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, they don't feel comfortable with. I think there are people who said, look, the prosecution, to me, that was the one that was like a layup. Like, like that's almost like axiomatic at this point. I mean, like the defense wasn't even disputing that there was prostitution. So, I mean, it'd be hard to say no to that.
Right.
The trafficking part, in terms of trafficking Cassie and his other girlfriend, victim number 2, I think there are people who say 2 things. One, if it's your intimate partner, it's harder to think about it in that way. And 2, Cassie showed enough interest and agency with regard to the freak offs. When she texts him later and says, hey, let's do another one. I want to do this. I'm going to go look for people. I think that there are people who, once they hear that, basically they don't understand how complicated consent is and how powerful coercion is.
And that's a big issue in our society, right? Like, how do we define sexual assault? How do we define rape and things like that? There are a lot of people, let's be honest, who have given people drugs or alcohol to loosen them up so that they could have sex, and don't see that as a form of coercion or sexual assault. And it is. Like, the law says it is. So when they see her, and also the other point is, you can say yes one time and no another time. And I think that a lot of people were like, well, she said yes all these times, or she seemed to, like, said yes all these times, that they didn't care that she said no, or if they don't, like, 1 time or 2 times, they didn't care about that. And so when you combine her saying no with the fact that he's plying her with drugs, right? Taking her cell phone, threatening to release these things. Her mother's testimony. Her mother had to take out a second mortgage on the house to give him $20,000 to keep from releasing it. That's bribery. If they believe the mother, then you have bribery, which speaks to the RICO. Like, these are the things that I'm like, how do we like miss this? What about all these guns with the scratched off serial like numbers? Like, again, the weapons part of that. Like, come on. Like, I just feel like the news and the media picked up on the so-called events, and I don't call them what you refer to them as, because I think that that's part of the problem, right? Focusing on that, Astroglide, baby oil, that doesn't matter.
Sensational stuff,
Right. These events, there were times during these events that these women did not consent, and he coerced participation through drugging them.
Right.
It's really hard, and I don't expect everybody to understand it. But as a survivor of sexual assault multiple times, I can see a world in which they take the drugs because they know this is going to happen anyway, just to get through it. And Cassie had testimony saying that. But there's going to be
Yeah.
people who are going to say, well, why didn't she walk away? Well, we also, the video, what happened when she tried to walk away, he kicked and stomped her and dragged her by her hair back into the room. And that's just the one time that was caught on tape. So how do we not know she didn't try to leave other times and the same thing didn't happen?
I would assume she had. I would assume she did, and that you know, if I was just making a bet, and I don't know, I wasn't there, but nothing about that tape or about everything we know about Diddy would make me think that leaving is not just easy, but that's possible.
Right. And then we remember Danielle from Vibe. Remember, she said that whole over the cover, allegedly, that he threatened to put her in the back of a trunk. Yeah. If you know this about the person that you with, right? The person who just locked you into a 10 record deal that no one ever gets and basically financially locks you in. Like, if you know this about this person and you're young and, you know, all these things are happening, people don't have empathy for what that's like. And if a person has not been emotionally abused, financially abused, physically, sexually abused, they're not necessarily going to have a relation or empathy to that. And I just happen to be on the other side of that. I know what that's like. And that's part of the issue. And so people, they say that women tend to be harsher towards, you know, sexual assault victims, especially if they're mothers. They say the perfect juror for a trial like this is a mother of a son, because she's going to put herself in a position, what if this was my son, right? They love those women, all those kinds of things, right? There's a lot going on. And I just don't think that everyone is able to have that level of conversation about it.
An interesting comment came up from Rennie Tay here, who's one of our longtime members, and a brilliant brother. Yeah. He said, ironically, is our collective inability to see male escorts as trafficking victims part of why he could get away? Didn't testimony note that some of the escorts feared for their lives? There is something to that. I want you to talk about that.
So I think that's why he got the prostitution conviction, because they were men. I think if they were female sex workers, they wouldn't have gotten him for those either. And that's just the nature of like sex work and convictions and things like that. They always convict the sex workers, but not the Johns, right? And so I think because these were men, there was some feelings within the jury about that. And I think them being men, and I think them testifying that they feared for their lives, is why they were able to get that, like, cross the state lines, you know, prostitution thing.
But that's what's interesting, right? Because I'm hearing Rennie, if I'm understanding Rennie right, he's saying there's a way that them being men made it easy to get them for the prostitution, and we could probably add homophobia. We got all the things to that.
All of that. Yes.
But there's also a way that, like, we don't believe they didn't get the other charge, a trafficking charge, and it might be because we couldn't see men. It's almost like because they were men, we couldn't see them as victims of trafficking.
Yes, exactly. Like, again, the same way people are saying, well, why? Even in the comments now, they're saying, well, why didn't Cassie just leave? If you think that this slight woman, a petite woman, is leaving a guy who has a house full of guns with sawed-off serial numbers on it and is making threats that her parents have to intervene, if she, you know, you're saying she should leave, they're going to think, well, yeah, you're men, you could get up and go. The man has over 20 other civil lawsuits pending, and
including some new ones.
Yeah, and several of them are men. Okay, like, we have to unlock and get out of that homophobia and all of those weird patriarchal notions about how men can't be victims of sex crimes.
The comment that's on the screen right now comes. This is one that's been bandied about a lot, particularly by men. The Jay-Z isn't single comment. It's alluding to a conversation that happened between Capricorn Clark. And for those that don't know, Capricorn Clark is a former assistant of Diddy, and she wasn't she wasn't doing Diddy any favors in the courtroom. But there was this moment where Capricorn Clark says that she told Cassie that she should leave Sean Combs, Diddy, whatever, alone and date other people, given how tumultuous, how violent, how nasty their relationship was. And according to her, she testified that Cassie said, who would she date? She said, Jay-Z is taken. I've seen that all around the internet.
Did she mention his money when she talked about it? Because I don't remember her mentioning the money. I remember her mentioning Jay-Z. But
yeah, she didn't say money. She just said,
right. So
who would I date? Jay-Z is taken.
Maybe she liked Jay-Z.
I think a reasonable interpretation is that she's saying, who else of this status?
That's what I'm thinking. Like, who of this status? I'm in the industry. I'm a young woman in the industry. I've got a deal. I got some hits out there. You know, I'm trying to date up like every other person is. Like, who am I gonna go date? The dude I went to high school prom with? Like, I could understand someone saying that. But also I see why people concede, you know, oh, it's a gold digging situation. Okay, well, how about the fact that he signed her to a 10 record contract that if they had the records, she might have actually made the money.
Right.
Okay? But he would not release her music. So
yeah, we didn't let her make the record. But Pastor Joint Packers said gold digger, but I'm not, I care less about that comment. I care more about the response to it, which was even if she was gold digging, that's not an excuse for abuse and sexual assault.
Like it does, like, and that's what people don't understand. And so we still live in a society where there are, I mean, every time I see something about a woman being killed by a jealous man, you will always see comments from people saying, well, she shouldn't have cheated on him, as if cheating is an excuse to end someone's life. That's how people think. And when it comes to women, especially again, when people see that they violated a man, people wish the worst on them, right? Like they wish harm on them. Look at what's her name? The sister Lauren London, supposedly dating again. People like are talking about her. She needs to like not exist anymore. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, but that's how people think. And they think that women are property of men and should do what they should, whatever they say. So even if she was a gold digger, why didn't he leave then? If she's such a bad person, if she was a gold digger, if she was a liar, she was all of those things, why did he stay with her?
Right. Simple thing said, just because someone is a victim in some situation doesn't mean they're completely innocent. But that's kind of the point here,
that's
y'all.
The inverse of just because they say yes once doesn't mean that they didn't say no another time.
Exactly. You don't have to be perfect or innocent.
And that's the problem. Right.
Right.
Everybody wants a perfect victim. But you know why they would never be perfect victims? These weren't white women.
Right.
Like, let's be honest. If Cassie was a white woman, this trial would have been over in 2 weeks. He'd be in the slammer. Like, knock it off.
That's the irony of the Mann Act being used against him, which was obvious, which was the White Slavery Sex Act of 1910. It was a way that the legal infrastructure itself that we deal with was designed to protect white women, sometimes from black men, in general from any kind of sexual violence that was almost, I mean, they called it white slavery. It was like, this isn't meant for white women. Black women, that's the natural condition. But for white women, no, we need to make some laws to stop this shit. Yeah. And it extended into people like Jack Johnson and other people.
Right. And those of us that are, kind of do this work and do this advocacy understand that the race and class of the victim is always more important than the race and class of the perpetrator. Right. And so like we can look at all these different cases, we can control for them. Look, with Bill Cosby came under fire, most of his victims were white women, right? And so people were using that, well, he's innocent. No, that man was nothing innocent about that man. But people cared the way they did, right? Because so many of them were white women. Whereas Samuel Little, one of probably the most prolific serial killer in the country, most of his victims were black women, and that's how he got away with killing over 90 women, right? As a black man. So we have to kind of look at that, trust and believe. If Diddy, if Cassie was white, Capricorn Clark, white, if all these women were white, they would have found him guilty on everything and would have recommended the max. Okay, that's just the world we live in.
Philippe Lindsay said the kid cutting Capricorn Clark testimony hurt the prosecution's case tremendously. It was a turning point in the trial. That whole line of questioning revealed a motive on Cassie's behalf.
What motive?
I'm going to dismiss that last part, not because he doesn't. Philippe, you have a right to your opinion. I think the argument that Philippe is making, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Philippe, but it sounds like you're saying the motive was that, again, it's going back to the gold digger narrative. I'm less interested in that, and I'm more interested in saying the prosecution. How did the prosecution not see this coming? They know we live in a sexist, misogynist society. They know we live in a society where women aren't black women in particular aren't compelling victims. How did they think this was going to play out? Like,
I mean, again, from the beginning, I was of two minds. I was like, wow, they've got a pretty good case against him if they bring it forward, if they do what they need to do. And the other part was like, they ain't getting him for nothing. This is Diddy. Right. This is Diddy. Like real life Nino Brown. Like I've said to people all the time, I said he's what people think Suge Knight is.
Yes.
like come on. Like decades.
That's the crazy part.
like decades of this. You could see how he treated his artists. You could see, I mean, the rumors have been swirling for him so long that you can't ignore, like, something had to be there. You know what I mean? Like, you said they listen to evidence, including, they listen to evidence when they're awake. Okay. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but there were several people that were in the courtroom every day, just like, yo, these jurors are asleep again. They're sleeping through this. They don't want to be here. And it was, and it's also right before July 4th. They wanted to go home. That's the worst time to have a case. Either you're going away or you're getting off, because people want to go home. They do not want to be carrying this past their holiday season. Like, again,
I'm with you.
You know, like, the system is the problem. The entire system is not set up, you know, in a way that's fair or just for anybody. There's too many factors: money, class, race, gender, all those things.
Do you think, here's another place I'm struggling, right? Diddy's now looking at up to 20 years for this prostitution charge. I'm of the mind that prostitution shouldn't even be illegal.
Right.
How do we square those two things, right? On the one hand, you know, there's a sense that people want Diddy to be held accountable for something. And in the context of this criminal legal system, that would mean jail. And in the context of this case, it would mean finding him guilty for this crime, which they have. And in this case, it would mean giving him an actual sentence versus time served. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I mean, to me, the justice was her getting her money. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm like, that's why I see, again, as a survivor, I understand fully why people go the civil route rather the criminal route, right? Like, and money is restitution, because again, we're talking, he signed her to a 10-album deal and did not let her create and build a career that she could have had, right? And now you got to pay her, right? And the fact that he paid that quick, he had the money. So he tried not to pay her the first time. Well, now he had to pay more. So to me, that's justice. She's moved on. She's got her life. She's married. Has her family, and she's constantly working on healing from everything. But she got her money, and money is restitution. Ask all the reparation folks. Yes, it is.
So if the justice came in the civil suit, would it be just then? Since the justice piece has already been as resolved as it can be.
For her, yes.
For her. And we're not caging just for punishment. Yeah. Then what do we do? What expectation do you have? What desire do you have for the sentencing result? Like, what do you want to see happen?
So the same thing that I wanted, you know, for R. Kelly. And I ruffled a lot of feathers when I said he shouldn't have gone to jail, because we should not have to pay for him to sit in jail and get 3 meals a day and continue to make music and call people on the phone to sing happy birthday. It could be at home, restricted, house arrest, not having access to be able to make money, right? Like, you can't record any more music because all your music was about children. So maybe Diddy is no longer allowed to be a producer. Maybe he's not allowed to have access to certain things. Maybe he has to check in with, you know, some kind of supervision, but he's housebound, right? And just limiting what he's able to do and paying restitution to his community and to the people that he harmed, right? So I'm looking at a cap, and that's what he's going to end up having to do. Again, he has over 20 civil cases pending against him, okay? He's going to be bankrupt. Like, civil cases are a little bit easier to go. He's going to have to pay. And I think him paying restitution and he's losing all his brand deals. Ain't nobody going to work with him brand-wise. His name is tarnished, right? Ciroc, I think, is the biggest moneymaker he has right now. Maybe
I think he's done with. I believe at this time.
I think he got Ciroc back.
Oh, did he?
If I'm not mistaken. When I was looking, somebody fact checked me, but when I was looking it up, he got it back.
I'm pretty sure. Okay. They ended the partnership because he never actually owned it, so it was a weird.
It was a weird partnership. Yeah. But you know, I think in terms of like what's going to make him money, bankrupt him. That's where he gets all this power from, because he's able to buy people. He's able to pay for these things. If you take the things away from him that give him this power, no guns, no money, you know, no opportunity to work in the business, then you've kind of muzzled him, right? And you've kind of like take him out of that place where he continues to harm people. Again, they're keeping him now because they see him as a dangerous, violent man, right? He needs help. And I'm the person who will always believe in recovery if you want to. Whether or not he wants to, I can't say, but he needs help. He needs like professional help. He needs community support. He needs people that are not yes people and that just go along with everything because he has money. He needs to be held accountable. He needs to go back into his community and provide real services that is not going to make him look good. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you can give $1 million to this particular organization, but that just makes you look good. Are you actually going and talking to these young people about the perils that they could face in the industry and how you messed up in your life? Like, restitution, we have to think about those things. I don't believe in us paying $130,000 a year for him to be housed in a jail somewhere. For what?
It doesn't advance justice. Doesn't make anybody whole. Doesn't restore anybody.
It doesn't restore anything. Like, what restoration is he going to find in jail? He's just, okay, so he's doing his time and then he comes back and he goes right back to what he was doing. What did we just spend all that money for?
He has a charter school, man. That's not the comeback that you think it is, Dave.
It's really not to us. Sorry.
Baby K said, how can we better educate ourselves on what cycles of abuse look like so we're not making uninformed comments like, why didn't she leave, or why didn't she come forward sooner, etc. Shout out to you, Baby K, for your generous donation as well.
That's a wonderful question. And there are several organizations that do these kinds of teach-ins and workshops and things like that. If you're looking, the sexual violence and domestic intimate partner violence advocacy organizations, they do workshops. They print, they write out things that people can learn and can read. What are the signs of abuse? What are the signs of coercion and things like that? Everybody knows somebody who is currently being abused. Everybody. That's just the truth. And it's not a gendered thing. It's not a sexual orientation thing. It's not an age thing, a race thing. Everybody has somebody in their life right now that is being abused. And it's a good chance they're not telling you because they don't trust that you're going to believe them. And so that's a us issue. That's a community issue. Why are we so quick to take the side or try to defend these people that are harming others? We see it with our own eyes. If a man can kick and stomp a woman and drag her by her hair back into a room, you're telling me that you can't imagine that he does other stuff like that? That's not a good person.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you believe about the case, why are you jumping to defend him? You could just be quiet.